So Microsoft Excel is full of all sorts of objects. And like I mentioned in the prior video, the more familiar you are or you become with the Excel application itself and its objects, the easier time you're going to have writing VBA code. Because that's really all you're doing is communicating with objects through code, through the written language. Okay? So we took a quick preview at kind of a hierarchy, right? Top level, you've got the application. Right below, which is Excel. Right below that, you've got the workbook object, right? It's your main file that you work with inside of Excel. And then now workbook, below that, you've got worksheets. And that worksheet contains other objects right within it that make up the worksheet. Well, I opened up a search engine, I typed in Excel VBA object model, and I found this Microsoft page. It's object model for Excel. Now there's all sorts of information. I'm going to put the link right here. I'm going to put it in the description down below. You can find the link. You can go out and visit it. I recommend that you spend a little bit of time, right? If not a lot of time, getting in and becoming familiar with this page and the various links on this page. So just to walk you through a little bit here, a great resource that Microsoft has provided for us, and it's continually being updated. You can see here that this has been updated by a few people, the little picture icon, profile icons there, but this was last updated on January 22nd of 2020. Today, it is, as of recording right now, it is March 16th. So a few months back, it was updated, and it will continually be updated. So this is just the overview page, and it's got some good high-level information on there about what this is all about. But over on the left, this is the table of contents that this page makes reference to. And you can see here I'm looking at the object model, currently the overview page. But down below that, I've got a huge list, alphabetically sorted, thankfully. Thank you, Microsoft. On the objects that make up Excel. You see that there's quite a few of them. I can guarantee you're familiar with Excel, you've been working inside of Excel, you're going to be familiar with quite a few of these here, right? We may not call them by their exact names that they give them here, but you're going to be familiar with it. For example, you've got the workbooks object or the workbook object. You've got the worksheet object. See, if I scroll back towards the top, alphabetically sorted, we've got the application object. Let's open that one up for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and click application object. I'll hit application object in there, and it's going to give me a little bit of a breakdown. You can see that this one was, let's see, March 27th, 2019, so just about a year ago when it was last updated. But you can see that it gives you some information about the application object. And they give you examples of code and so on. A whole load of information. Now, something that we're going to talk about more in depth as we continue is each object has characteristics, the way that they are built, or you can interact with them, and so on. Here, the application object itself, Excel, contains events, things that are triggered, like when you first open. Let's see if I can find open here. See, there's workbook before. There it is right there. Workbook open. Okay? So there's an event that triggers when a workbook is opened. And now, why is that important to us? Why is that event there? Well, you can automate something. As soon as somebody opens up the workbook, you can write a little snippet of code, a procedure, that will make something happen. Like maybe a form opens up, or a prompt, or it refreshes the data, or does something, right? As soon as the workbook opens. And we can take advantage of the events that trigger as you're working inside of the Excel application. So I can keep going here. There's methods. So I spoke briefly about methods. Remember that little brick flying through the air, that green thing? Now, these are things that the application can do, or the things that we can call and get the application to do it. Such as they got one for evaluate. They've got one for, let's see. Find one that maybe we're a little bit more familiar with. Calculate. Right? You open up the workbook, and right away we want to be able to calculate the data. Okay? Get it to refresh the calculations there. In some cases, you may turn off the automatic calculate option. so we can get a procedure, a little bit of VBA code to do that for us. Okay? Now, those are methods. And if I keep going, we've also got properties, right? Things that we can change about the application, such as name. We saw that earlier, right? We can change the name of the active worksheet, maybe the active workbook, or things that we can receive from the application. Some properties are read-only. Like you're not going to be able to change the name of Excel, right? The application itself, it is Excel, right? But it is something that we can receive from the application itself. So you may run into some properties that are read-only. Some you can write, some you can only read. But you can see that there's loads of properties that make up the application itself. Look at all those properties. Loads and loads and loads of them. Let's see here. There's one for active cell, one for active sheet. We saw active sheet earlier. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Active sheet. So application.activeSheet. Remember, we can get more explicit with it. We could say application.workbook, like active workbook.activeSheet. Now you're getting more explicit. Becomes important when you start working with multiple workbooks open inside the instance of Excel, and you want to distinguish between which active sheet and which active workbook you want to work with. But now the active sheet, and it's got examples in there. That's a whole load of code going on inside of there. But it talks all about the active sheet property of the application. Let's go back. All right, let's see. I'm going to mess with one of them here just to give you an example, and it's the add custom list. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the more familiar you are within Excel, the more familiar you're going to be with its objects and its features and things that you can do within the application itself, which is going to translate into your experience with VBA. Well, custom lists. What's a custom list? Well, take a look. If I get back into Excel here, I'm going to go up to my File tab. I'm going to go down to Options, File Options. Underneath the Advanced section, I'm going to scroll all the way down towards the bottom, and there's an option in here for Create Lists for use in sorts and fill sequences. And I'm going to go to Edit Custom List. All right, here we go. So here's our custom list window. Now there's some by default that you're going to have, like the days of the week and the months. Those are default. Every single copy of Microsoft Excel, ever since I can remember, has those options. But then you can also create custom lists. And these custom lists allow you to do things like sort by specific order. Like I've got one in here for colors, red, green, blue, right? Now, if I got a list of a column of colors, red, green, blue, I can sort that by this list right here. Put all the reds together, all the greens together, all the blues together, and sort it by that order. I'm going to give you an example here. I was teaching a live class at a clothing, clothing, not a store, but the corporate center. And they were asked, they had a question. They said, well, we want to sort our list by clothing size. You know, small, medium, large, extra large, and so on. Well, if they had a column of clothing sizes and they wanted to sort that, default, it would sort it alphabetically. It wouldn't do it by size, right? Small, medium, large, extra large, and so on. It would do it alphabetically. What if they had extra small, right? Alphabetically, that doesn't come before S, right? So we would create a custom list to help us do that. Well, you can do it through the Excel interface. There's an option right here. I can create new ones. I can go to new list. I can type it out. I can hit add, and it'll add it to my custom list here, and I can use it in sorts and fill series. Well, we can also do that through VBA. We can automate that. Let me get back into my VBA window here. Now, I'm going to show this off just quickly here, just to give you an example of working with a method of the application object. Now, unfortunately, I can't do this through the immediate window. It won't allow it to happen. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to insert a module. Modules are essentially, it's a fancy place for us to store our code, our procedures, so that we can reuse them. The immediate window, it's temporary. It's immediate, runs right away, but it's temporary. So here, I'm going to create a procedure. It's going to be a sub procedure. and I'm going to say add size list, and I'm going to hit my enter key. So this is a sub procedure. We'll talk more about this here in a later video. But I've created the sub procedure, given it a name, add size list, and now I'm going to tell it what this procedure is going to do. And in this case, I'm going to get into the application object. Remember that? I get a list of its properties and methods, alphabetical, and I'm going to find add custom list. There it is. I'm going to hit my space bar here, and the custom list, add custom list, it's a method. It's going to do something inside the application for us, right? But it has some arguments, it has some parameters that it needs in order for it to do its job. In this case, it's got two. It's got one called list array and one called by row. Now, by row, you can see it's in brackets. That means it's optional. You can ignore it, which is what I'm going to do for now. We're just going to push that to the side. I don't need it. But list array is something I need. We need to tell it what the custom list is going to contain. So I am going to create an array. Now, this is a bit of information. We haven't talked about all this yet, but this is just to give you an idea of working with an object and one of its methods. And now I'm going to create an array or collection of values that it's going to put into the list. So I'm going to do sizes. So we'll do XS, extra small, right? We'll do small. Oops, I got to put those in quotes. We'll do small, medium, large, and so on. All right, I'll stop right there. Okay, so now I've got the application object, which has a method called add custom list, which expects an array or collection of values to go into that list. Now, just for fun, I'm going to hit my down arrow here. Watch what happens to application. Down, and it capitalized the A. Just a side note. It's a very important side note, but a side note. VBA, Visual Basic for Applications, is case sensitive. Now, thankfully, built into the VBE editor, the Visual Basic editor, it does a syntax check for us and looks for things like this. If it recognizes the keyword and it should be capitalized, it'll do it for you. Okay, huge, great, love it. Okay? But keep an eye on it. Sometimes it won't always do it, and I use it to kind of help myself check my own code. For example, if I misspelled it, application, right? I put an A in there instead of an I. When I hit my down arrow or hit my enter key, it doesn't capitalize it. Well, that's because it doesn't recognize it at this point. It's like, I don't know what that word is, so good luck, right? You're on your own. You're going to get an error. So I'm going to fix that, put an I back in there, and it should capitalize it for me. I do that as a double check, right? Just, yep, capitalized. I'm looking good. All right. I'm going to click into that procedure. I'm going to go up to my menus at the top of the screen. I'm going to go to Run, one of the menus I told you to keep an eye on. And I'm going to hit the Run Sub or F5. I can hit that on my keyboard. This will run that procedure. So it just executed, just ran. We didn't see anything. But if I go to File, Options, Advanced, remember this? Scroll all the way down. There's my create list. I'll go to edit custom lists, and there's my new size list right there. So programmatically, all through code, using the object model, we can communicate with objects and use its methods or properties to communicate with it and tell it to do specific things, all through a little bit of code. So this is just a quick preview. It's something we're going to keep talking about. We're going to get into the object model because it's very important. But I'm going to recommend, let's bring that back on my screen. I'm going to recommend right now, right, spend a few minutes, just a few minutes, right? Don't spend more than that, just for right now. But I do recommend more minutes later on. Dig through this list. Take a look at it, right? Look for things like the workbook, the worksheet. Maybe look for charts or pivot tables. But get familiar with the objects that make up the VBA environment, the Visual Basic environment. The more familiar you are with the objects, the more streamlined your code's going to become, and the easier time you're going to have writing your code as you get into Visual Basic. So take some time, dig through them, look at properties and methods, and even try something out if you like to. You know, be adventurous. You're not going to break anything, right? You can always close the document, reopen, start over again. So try it out. Get in there, get familiar with the object model that makes up our VBA environment.